the channel. I'm back to break down this 11-game slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Before we get into it, I have released multiple packages over there on Patreon. If you're interested, MLB packages, go ahead and check that out. Linked in the description, where you get access to things like my starting pitcher data sheet that you see behind me during the video, my hot hitter StatCast data tool, my team hitting data, my bullpen data, and my power rankings and cheat sheet. Go ahead and check that out. I think it's going to help you be a better MLB DFS player. I think it's going to help you make better lineups each and every night. We got about a week left of the season, and if I can't take down a tournament, I want one of my subscribers to. So go ahead and check that out. You can follow me over on Twitter at KJK_DFS. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate today. So as always, I like to go ahead and figure out the pitchers that we're going to want to play in our lineups. And I do this by looking at K rate. It's fantasy sports. We get points for strikeouts. And the top guy on the slate today in K rate is that Blake Snell taking on these New York Mets. Snell comes in with a 31.9% K rate, a 16% swinging strike rate. The ground ball, the fly ball stuff's reasonable. He has a 31.3% K rate against righties and then a 34.9% K rate against lefties. So he really excels against left-handed hitting. And when looking at his matchup today in the New York Mets, they are going to roll out quite a few lefties. I mean, it's looking like they're going to go with their right-handed heavy lineup to try to combat the splits. However, I will say that typically speaking, their lineup is usually left-handed heavy, so it's going to be interesting as the season's dwelling down here. Some of these lineups that we're seeing might be a little bit different, but anyways, it's Blake Snell. He's 9.5K. We know what he has to offer. He's an absolute stud. He hasn't been the greatest this year, so not exactly the full-on Blake Snell that we're used to seeing, but when looking at the K rate and everything on the slate and comparing him to other pitchers, he definitely tops the slate. So first guy I have interest today in is Blake Snell. Next on the list is Keegan Akin, taking on the Boston Red Sox. Comes with a 31.3% K rate. We are only dealing with an 18 innings pitch sample size, but he's got a 13.8 swinging strike rate. The ground ball, the fly ball, the walk, and the hard hit rate's been a little bit iffy, but the strikeout stuff's still there. He's got a 32.3% K rate against righties. Once again, the hard, the contact, and the slugging's a little iffy, but against lefties, he's very, very good, and he's got a 26.7% K rate. So while only dealing with an 18 innings pitch sample size, the kid's definitely shown a lot of strikeout upside early on. And he gets to take on the Boston Red Sox today, who haven't exactly been the most threatening lineup throughout the year. So I do think that he's a viable option, and you might get him lower owned because just strictly the Red Sox name value. Their team is typically good year in and year out. However, they aren't really the greatest this year, so the typical player may not want to play him today. And I do think that he's a viable option. He has a lot of strikeout upside. And while he is a little bit risky, being that he gives up that hard contact to these right-handed hitters, he's definitely a viable option. So have some interest in him on the cheap end. When we get to the bats section of the show, we might have some interest in Boston bats as well. You have to pick which side of the fence you're on there, but definitely a kid to have interest in today. Seth Lugo taking on these Tampa Bay Rays. Comes in third on the list. He has a 29% K rate, 11.2 swinging strike rate. The ground ball, the fly ball, the walk, the hard hit rate's all there. Very effective pitcher. He has a 30.3% K rate against righties and then a 27.4% K rate against lefties. So Seth Lugo, a guy that's being converted into a starter, traditionally has been a bullpen arm. We definitely can have some interest in him today. It's just the matchup. A lot of these guys we're talking about at the top of the show with the strikeout rate, they don't have the best matchups. So, when we're looking at the Tampa Bay Rays run line, however, it's not very high. It's only at a 4.22 implied run total, and Seth Lugo comes in at the mid-range at 7.4K. So, not the most ideal matchup. I definitely think there's some more strikeout happy teams. However, I feel like as we're going along here, the pitching's really thin on this slate, so it's going to be interesting to see where we land. But Seth Lugo, definitely a guy that's got the talent and definitely a guy you could have interest in today, which brings me to my next guy to break down, which is Caleb Smith taking on the Texas Rangers. And Caleb Smith is a guy that he has a strikeout upside. He just has some big hard contact issues, but I do think that he's in a matchup that we can capitalize on today because Texas Rangers really struggle against left-handed pitching. So 26.3% K rate, a 12.4 swinging strike rate, a 26.6% K rate against righties, but he really struggles with the hard contact and the slugging and all that stuff against right-handed hitting. But against lefties, he's very good. And when looking at my team hitting data sheet, as always, I like to give you guys, a sneak peek of what I have to offer over there on Patreon when possible. And when we're looking at the Texas Rangers, we can see that they have been less than impressive this year overall as a lineup. The slugging's really bad. The ISO's bad. The K percentage is bad. And then against righties, not that applies here because they're facing a lefty, it's bad. And then against lefties, it's really, really bad. So something I want to point out. 25.7% K rate. The WOBA's terrible. The ISO's bad. The slugging's bad. Everything's bad. So I do think that this is the first matchup that we're looking at where we can go ahead and say, wow, this is a good matchup. So excited about that. But looking at Caleb Smith and the Vegas lines, he comes in at 5.8K, very, very affordable, and he comes in as a 140 favorite, which is saying something considering these Arizona Diamondbacks have been very bad this year. So they're favorited. He's taken the bump. I definitely think that he's a viable option today, and the pitching seems to kind of stink on this slate, so I'm kind of excited that we get him at a cheap price tag and we get him in a great matchup for him to excel with the stuff that he has. So Caleb Smith, definitely a guy I have interest in today. Probably a guy you're going to be seeing on my cheat sheet if you're a Patreon member. On the cheap end, I like him a lot today. So go ahead and get him in some of your lineups. And then this is when, we're going to have to start looking at some matchups because the pitching talent fades off real quick. Drew Smyly is a guy who's looking to be one of the next top guys on the slate in strikeout rate, and Drew Smyly sucks. So I think that kind of explains what we're looking at here. Yeah, it's just not really a lot of places to go after that, to be honest with you. I would say the next option that I'm looking at is Jose Quintana taking on these Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pittsburgh Pirates have been very, very bad all year long. We can go ahead and glance back over at my team hitting data sheet. Try to find these Pirates for you. Right here, right above the Rangers. They suck. So, sorry to be harsh, but it's true. Red across the board, dark orange across the board, absolutely terrible. 24.3% K rate, 25% K rate to right-handed pitching, and just terrible. And then against lefties, they have been a little bit better. So, I mean, I can kind of eat my own words as far as, Quintana being a lefty. However, I'm still interested because they've been dreadful overall. So, I think we can kind of negate the splits as far as being concerned. Even though they're better, they're still bad. And when looking at the Vegas lines are not out yet. However, I will say that Jose Quintana gets a big ballpark upgrade going into Pittsburgh versus pitching in Chicago. It's a lot bigger in PNC Park. So I definitely think it's an upgrade for him as far as pitching environment. He'll have more room for error, and I think I made it clear. I just think these Pittsburgh Pirates suck this year, so I think that he's a good target on today's slate. At 7.1K, when breaking down his numbers, he has a 21.2% K rate, 20.7% K rate against right-handed hitting, and then a 22.9% K rate against lefty. So nothing that's going to blow your socks off, but when you're factoring in the matchup, I do think that this matchup's going to give him some more strikeout upside. So Quintana, definitely a guy I have interest in. And then, I think that pretty much wraps up the pitching segment for the most part. I definitely didn't touch on some guys that are probably going to garner most of the ownership, but I think they're just kind of blatantly obvious. Dustin May is a guy taking on Oakland. I'm sure is going to grab some ownership just because he's a more respectable pitcher. The ground ball, the fly ball, the walk, the hard hit rate's all very good, but he doesn't have any strikeout upside really. So I understand why he's going to get ownership. That's valid. I'm just looking for guys with upside and that are lower owned, but I have to mention him. Randy Dobnak taking on these Detroit Tigers. The Detroit Tigers rank last in K rate in the league. They're the very worst, but Randy Dobnak's the very worst on the slate in K rate as far as pitching. So it's kind of ironic and interesting. However, he's very, very good at the ground ball, the fly ball, the hard hit rate. He just doesn't get any strikeouts. So being that he's taking on the Detroit Tigers, he's probably going to get that strikeout boost. So you can definitely have interest in him today. So I have to throw him in there. He just actually is ranked dead last on the slate in strikeout rate. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, definitely gets the best matchup. So he'll get a bump. And the very, very last guy that I will mention, I have to mention two more guys, and they're both in the same game, and then we'll move on to bats. So number one is Austin Gomber taking on the Kansas City Royals. He is a 94 innings pitch sample size, so it's a little bit limited, but he has a 21.1% K rate, a 23% K rate against right-handed hitting, and then a 16.7% K rate against lefties. So he actually excels more against right-handed hitting, and he's a left-handed pitcher, so we don't always see that. And he's only 5.6K, and he gets to take on a Kansas City Royals lineup who's going to be rolling out all righties and righties with some high strikeout rates. So I do think that Gomer's another interesting cheap option. He's definitely valid. And lastly, Brady Singer. Brady Singer is the last pitcher I'll mention before we get on the bats. Top prospect for the Kansas City Royals. Kid that's supposed to have a ton of talent. He has a 23.3% K rate, a 52.6% ground ball rate, a 30.9 fly ball rate, a 34.2% hard hit rate, 24.2% K rate against righties, and a 22.6% K rate against lefties. So Singer's really shown his talents early on. And while the St. Louis Cardinals isn't the top matchup, he is only 6.9K, and he's got some of the best stuff on the slate. So, yeah, I do think that we're probably going to want to pay down for pitching today. I get if you want to pay up for Randy Dobnak because of the matchup, but I think the pitching's kind of not good. So that's where we're going to segment into bats, because I think the bats are going to be a lot more interesting than the pitching today. So, as always, I like to sort my sheet by Sierra, skill, and active ERA to figure out the hitters that we're going to want to target against these bad pitchers. And the very worst pitcher on the slate today is that Bryce Wilson for these Atlanta Braves, and he's taking on the Miami Marlins, who aren't exactly the most threatening lineup, but when you're looking at Bryce Wilson's numbers, they are very bad. His strikeout rate is a 17.7. He's got a 7.01 ERA. Not good. The walk rate's very bad. The slugging, he gives up a 620 slugging to right-handed hitting, a 50.8% hard hit rate, a 412 WOBA, all very, very bad. And then against lefties, he still gives up a 593 slugging, and that's just terrible. So, yeah, Bryce Wilson, a guy that we can have a ton of interest in targeting. I don't really care which hitters, which side of the plate, to be honest with you. We just want to target the guys with the most power in the lineup. So, Corey Dickerson, Starling Marte, Jesus Aguilar, Matt Joyce, Brian Anderson, Garrett Cooper, Miguel Rojas. I would target every single one of those hitters. John Birdie and Jorge Alfaro, I probably would stay away from. The only reason I would play Alfaro is because he's a catcher and we have to fill in that catcher spot, so maybe to round out your stack, he's on a little bit on the cheaper end. But my main spot of interest is definitely going to be that 1 through 5 range, and then Garrett Cooper and Miguel Rojas. Yeah. Definitely have some interest in the Miami Marlins. I'm going to be interested to see what Vegas says when these lines come out as far as their run total, because they're not the most threatening lineup up and down, but they get a real good matchup today. So definitely have interest in them. Steven Brault taking on the Chicago Cubbies. This is going to be the next spot where I want to target. He has a 20% K rate, 9.7 swing strike rate, not getting the ball past anyone. He has a 4.79 ERA, terrible. The walk rate's up. He has a 416 slugging against righties and then a 335 slugging against lefties, so he's very much more effective against left-handed hitting. So we're going to want to target the Chicago Cubs righties today. Let's see. We got Wilson Contreras, Javi Baez, Cameron Maybin, David Bote, Jose Martinez, and Nico Horner. Those are the guys. Ian Happ, definitely a guy you can target as well. Yeah, so want to target those guys. Moving further along. Zach Davies doesn't rank out well in the Sierra department. However, I don't really think I'm going to want to target these Angels today. Just because Zach Davies does a pretty good job overall, actually, as far as like hard contact and stuff. So while he might be giving up some runs for daily fantasy sports purposes, I don't really think he's a pitcher we want to target. So we're going to skip over him. The next guy that I'm going to want to target is definitely not Drew Smyly, taking on these Colorado Rockies. Drew Smyly's not good. He's terrible in the hard hit category. He doesn't strike anyone out, really. He has a 27.7% or 27% K rate against righties, which is actually surprising. So that's better than I would anticipate with Smyly. But he has a 499 slugging, which is very, very bad, and a 617 slugging against lefties, which is just atrocious. So Drew Smyly is always a guy that I have interest in targeting. The Colorado Rockies, I do prefer to target when they're at home in Coors Field, and they only have a 3.73 implied run total, which is very, very low. But I do think a guy like Trevor Story, even though you have to pay up for him, if you can get him low-owned, he definitely has 2 home run potential here. So I always have to mention guys taking on Drew Smyly. So yeah, not a stack that I want to go with, but guys like Trevor Story and Arenado, I would want to play, but it looks like Arenado might not be in the lineup, so it's probably not going to be. He's been dealing with injury, so Trevor Story could be a unique one-off today. Moving further along, LJ Newsome taking on these Houston Astros. We're only dealing with an 11 innings pitch sample size, but he's been very, very bad when looking at his splits. He gives up a 615 slugging to right-handed hitting and then a 783 slugging to lefties. That's very, very bad. That's scary bad. It's only 11 innings pitched sample size, so I have to make that clear. We're not dealing with a ton of innings pitched. However, I think we can go ahead and proclaim him as being bad early on. So, George Springer, Jose Altuve, Michael Brantley, Kyle Tucker would be my favorite option in the entire lineup. Uliska Uriel, Carlos Correa, all those guys. And then Josh Reddick at the bottom is a good price. And if he's struggling against lefties, we can get Reddick for cheap as well. So, got to have interest in these Houston Astros today. And then, those are some of the top options. We always have to mention the Dodgers, so we'll just break them down real quick. But they're taking on Frankie Montas, who's not the worst pitcher in the world. He's respectable. He has, pretty good numbers across the board when analyzing it. 345 slugging against righties, and then a 473 slugging against lefties. So he actually does struggle a little bit against lefties. So that's where you're looking to target these Dodgers today. I definitely target the lefties. He's much more effective against right-handed hitting. So Corey Seager, Max Muncy, Cody Bellinger, Edwin Rios, Gavin Lux. Those would be the guys I'd be targeting for the Dodgers. And then the Padres are right up there in run total as well. So in breaking down them, taking on Griffin Canning, when we're looking at his numbers, he has struggled a little bit in the hard contact category. He has a 473 slugging against right-handed hitting and then a 414 against lefties. So he's actually better against left-handed hitting, which is good for the San Diego Padres lineup because, some of their most elite hitters are right-handed hitting, but they also have the lefties that can slug them as well. So kind of best of both worlds, but they are priced up. But you always got to have interest. I mean, this lineup's looking healthy. It's looking real good. Their lineup's stacked up and down. Trent Grisham, Fernando Tatis, Eric Hosmer looking like he's going to be back. Manny Machado. They got the Mitch Mullen acquisition. Will Myers. Jake Cronenworth has a ton of power. Austin Nola has a ton of power for a catcher. And then Jerks and Profar, arguably the worst spot in the lineup, still really good. So, got to have interest in the Padres. It'll just cost you. But we had discussed we probably want to pay down for pitching. So, maybe they're a premier stack on today's slate. That would makes sense to pay down at pitching to fit those guys in. And then we do have to mention this Boston game. Looks like that has a 10.5 run total. And when breaking down the pitchers that are going to be featured in this game, Nick Pivetta for the Red Sox taking on these Orioles, 24.6% K rate. He's got a 25.6% K rate against righties, but the hard contact's pretty bad, 453, and then it's a 492 against lefties. So Pivetta, definitely a guy that's below average, not the greatest in the world. And when looking at the guys that we want to target in this lineup, we definitely want to target the guys with power in the middle. So G.J. Stewart, Ryan Mountcastle, Chance Sisco, I think it's a great option at catcher today. Renato Nunez has a ton of pop. Hanser Alberto has a ton of pop for a second baseman. Rio Ruiz has some pop. So that'd be my favorite part of the order, the 2 through 7 range. And then the Keegan Aiken kid that we had talked about, he definitely has a strikeout upside, and I think he's a viable option taking on these Red Sox. But I also do think you could target some Red Sox righties, not the lefties. He's very good against lefties. So the righties that crush the lefties. So, JD Martinez is going to be our favorite option. Xander Bogaerts is right there. Bobby Dalbec, the top prospect, he's looked real good as far as the power category. Michael Chavis. And then Christian Vasquez at the top of the order at the catcher spot. He's definitely a premier option at catcher because he gets the leadoff spot and he does crush left-handed pitching. So, like those guys today. And yeah, I kind of feel like it's just it's a slate where the good spots really stand out and the bad spots really stand out, and it's kind of blatantly obvious. And that's not a bad thing. It just happens to be what the case is today. The very last spot that I'm going to touch on. No, I have to do 2 more. Sorry, 2 more spots, and then we'll wrap this video up. Let's see. Tariq Skubal is the first guy I'm looking at when you're looking at splits taking on the Minnesota Twins. He has a 542 slugging against right-handed hitting, and that's what really stands out to me. We're going to want to target these righties in this Minnesota Twins lineup. So the guys that crush: Miguel Sano, Josh Donaldson, Nelson Cruz, Mitch Garver, Byron Buxton. I think that this lineup is also going to be a very high priority for me because they just crush lefties, and we're looking at Skubal's numbers. He gives up a lot of hard contact. So, yeah, definitely have some interest in Skubal today. And lastly, the last spot that I'm going to go over is that Jordan Lyles taking on these Arizona Diamondbacks. The Arizona Diamondbacks aren't good, but Jordan Lyles sucks. So, looking at his numbers across the board, I've had a lot of success targeting him this year. Orange across the board. He has a 438 slugging against righties and then a 448 slugging against lefties. So the very last stack that we can go ahead and stack up is definitely these Arizona Diamondbacks. And we're going to want to target the guys with power in the middle of the order: Josh Van Meter, Christian Walker, Cole Calhoun, Eduardo Escobar, David Peralta, Nick Ahmed, Stephen Vogt in the catcher spot. Like that lineup today. And that is just about my breakdown for today's slate. Quick little overview of what I've gone over as always. Let's see. For pitching, Jose Quintana taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. I think he's a great option. Blake Snell taking on the New York Mets. I think he's top option of the slate, but you're paying up for him. I'm not sure we're going to want to pay up for pitching today. Seth Lugo in the mid-range at 7.4K. Definitely a valid option. Bryce Wilson has been very bad early on. Definitely have some interest in these Miami Marlins power bats. Keegan Aiken is a guy that has some strikeout upside, and I think he can go ahead and pitch him against these Boston Red Sox today, but I do think that he's a little bit on the risky side, but he does have the strikeout rate, and the price tag is cheap. I like these Baltimore Orioles power bats in the middle order: DJ Stewart, Ryan Mountcastle, Chance Sisco, Renato Nunez. I like these righties for the Red Sox. If you're stacking them up and not playing Keegan Aiken, Christian Vasquez, Xander Bogaerts, JD Martinez, Bobby Dalbec, Michael Chavis. I like Randy Dobnak from a matchup standpoint, taking on the Detroit Tigers. He does have a low strikeout rate, but the matchup's there. He gives a little bit of a boost in his K rate today, and his ground ball and fly ball and all that stuff's very impressive. He comes in at 8.8K. And I think he's a viable option. I love these righties for the Twins that crush lefties: Miguel Sano, Josh Donaldson, Nelson Cruz, Mitch Garver. That stack's looking real juicy today. Austin Gomber and Brady Singer, I think, are interesting pitching options in this Kansas City Royals St. Louis game. Both young kids with some talent. The Houston Astros, you can stack up against LJ Newsome. He's really struggled against lefties. So Michael Brantley, Kyle Tucker is definitely a big option of mine today. I love Kyle Tucker in the 5 spot. Jordan Lyles sucks. I think we can target the Arizona Diamondbacks power bats: Josh Van Meter, Christian Walker, Cole Calhoun, Eduardo Escobar, David Peralta, Nick Ahmed. Caleb Smith is definitely an option I'm looking at today from the pitching end. I think he might be low-owned, and he does excel against left-handed hitting. It's not even that. It's just the Texas Rangers really struggle against left-handed pitching. So I think he has a strikeout upside today. Caleb Smith I have interest in. The San Diego Padres are another lineup that's going to be a premier stack. Love them. They're just stacked up and down. You can really play every single bat in this lineup, to be honest with you. Not to give you broad analysis, but it's true. Just stack up the top of the other guys with power. You know, if you're paying down for pitching, we're going to want to put in Trent Grisham, Fernando Tatis, Eric Hosmer, Manny Machado, Mitch Moreland. Those guys at the top of the lineup. Even the bottom of the lineup is just ridiculously stacked. Very good. These Los Angeles Dodgers lefties I have interest in: Corey Seager, Max Muncy, Cody Bellinger, Edwin Rios, Gavin Lux. Dustin May is an obvious pitching option on the slate, but I think at 9.3K, his strikeout upside isn't exactly what his price tag is. So you could definitely get there. I'm not saying he won't, but I just kind of feel like the pay down at pitching is the move at this on this slate. And then Drew Smyly sucks, but the Colorado Rockies suck on the road, so it's kind of a double-edged sword there. But Trevor Story, big-time one-off option that could pay off. He could go deep twice in this game, so I just want to throw him out there. You're going to pay up for him, but it could be contrarian. It could pay off in a big way. So, yeah, that's my overall breakdown of today's slate. Before I go ahead and wrap things up, I do have to give you guys my home run call of the day. And when looking at the slate today and the splits that we've gone over, you know, I had mentioned, well, we have multiple splitsy options, but really LJ Newsome splits against lefties are just standing out as being atrocious. 783 slugging is very, very, very bad. So while the Houston Astros don't really provide us with many lefties, they do provide us with one that I really, really like today, and I had mentioned it multiple times. And that bat is Mr. Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is my homer call of the day. I think he's going deep. He's only 4.2K on DraftKings, and I think he's a great option today taking on Newsom. So he's my homer call of the day. Go ahead and get some Kyle Tucker one-offs in your lineup and feel great about it. So that is it from me today. Go ahead and leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell if you're enjoying the content. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll be here the rest of the season breaking down these MLB DFS slates. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. I appreciate it, guys. I wish you all the best of luck tonight, and have a good one.